Hope everybody enjoys that. That's the Halloween version of News with Booze with our own Tape Damage, James Esparza, who created the intro for this. Last minute plans didn't coordinate completely. Got the illustrious Robert Barnes. How you doing?
How is it? I'm not sure if I was promoting it prematurely, but I was promoting the Alec Baldwin story.
Right, which I actually released with Grobert Mark earlier and just retweeted, which I appreciate. But you know what? We could talk about it anyway, because I was going to talk about the episode that we did. I don't know if Mark is going to make it on here or not, but it's still there's it's a huge story. So we were going to do a short on it, it's going to be 10 to 20 minutes to turn into 40.
Right. And is it already up?
It is already up, and that's actually what you retweeted just a minute ago. So everybody can definitely check it out. I'll cover it a little bit here. Definitely for everybody, check it out. And I'm pretty pleased with it.
What is the takeaway?
Well, the takeaway is, the thumbnail is who's at fault, and really, it's everybody's at fault. I mean, it's kind of it's late. It's a shit show, and we spent some time on it because Mark
Robert.
Yes, he got his film degree, and he was a location manager in New York because he was wired in. So he went to film school and got hooked up into the indie movies as a location scout. So we got some footage of him shooting the guy who was in Water for Chocolate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Italian actor, the award-winning guy. Anyway, so Mark killed him in a movie. So that was kind of, we tied that in. And then we just talked about a lot of the details that were in it. And it's a mess. I mean, it is really, really a mess. So bottom line, and I don't know how to work it because I don't know if there really is a full-blown criminal liability, and that's something you could answer. If everybody is negligent to a degree, but nobody is, 100%, I don't know. How do you deal with that? I mean, he was talking about that there's completion insurance, and we didn't go over that with the show. That's something we've talked about on the side. He's like, there's completion insurance. So I'm wondering if it's just going to fall to the insurance companies. Plus, the DA is a Soros DA in Santa Fe. So, is there any way that a Soros DA is going to go against Alec Baldwin?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great self-defense experts, who's the law of self-defense, literally wrote the book on it, and was going to be involved in a certain trial. But that's another story for another day as to how that's unfolding. But let's just say he's putting out good advice right now on Twitter. I'll just put it that way. Maybe some people should read it. But what he did a whole piece on why he thought Baldwin could be criminally prosecuted without even knowing the information that you guys had.
We'll have to check.
Enhances his criminal, basically for felony manslaughter.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and there may be a part 2 to this. As a matter of fact, speaking of the case, the Kenosha trial or whatever, I've been watching Ricada coverage or listening to it while at work, and oh my God, you're a prosecutor, man.
Yeah, I mean, he's just one of those. What he did is his whole case, and I've been talking about it for a year with Viva. Has always, even before I was involved in the case, it was clear that what Binger planned on doing was trying the case in the press. Because what he understood, that unfortunately some defense lawyers don't, is that you can win the case like they did in the Chauvin case. You can win the case with the jury before they ever sit down, and it won't matter what happened. Like we just did a sidebar with Chase Hughes. And so we're talking about, motivated reason and how 95% of what happens is your emotional part of your animal part of your brain decides something, and then the human part up here excuses it.
Yeah, you justify it.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything is an emotional choice, and Scott Adams is very deep into that too. He's like, "Oh, I already know that we're going to buy this car. Why? Well, because I already decided it, and why waste the time and talking about all my reasoning? I just want it."
Exactly, and that's the truth. But we don't like, for a great book called The Elephant in the Brain. It might be one of those authors you can find because you always get these great guests.
Could be.
It was fascinating because the book
Oh,
was
Rider and the
revelatory too.
Elephant. Yeah. And Jonathan
Yeah,
Haidt goes into that too, with the righteous
exactly,
mind.
because
Yeah.
precisely, because and the idea is, the elephant in the room, the elephant in the brain, and the idea is that for biological reasons, we need to believe that reason governs our decisions. That if
Sure.
we don't, that it would actually undermine our survival ability. But while we need to believe it, that doesn't make it any more true. And consequently, and what the whole thing Binger has done from the get-go is, I'm going to just lie about Kyle for a year. I'm going to so define him in the court of public opinion that by the time that jury sits down, it doesn't matter when they see the evidence, because they will see that evidence through the filter of their preconceived prejudices.
Sure.
And so, like, we did extensive survey polling in Kenosha, and about 2/3 of people in Kenosha presume Kyle guilty.
Right.
And it's because of all those lies. Like, you'll be riding with an Uber driver and you ask him what he thinks. He goes, "Oh yeah, he came from Chicago," and all these things are completely false, right? It's things
big black gun, very scary gun, all that.
And the whole idea is, take everything that the rioters and the looters and the arsonists and the sociopaths that were there that night, several of whom stalked him, tried to kill him, physically attacked him. Take their traits, and Binger has stuck them onto Kyle by a range of motions that he filed, which purportedly were about evidence or about bail or about jury instructions. They weren't. He knew he was never going to win on any of them, particularly in front of this no-nonsense judge. He did so because he knew the media would cover it. And in fact, the media knew they had immunity from liability, because anything filed in court, if they just report on it, they can't be sued. Even
That's such a scummy move, isn't it? Because he can just say anything in front of the court. But now, in fairness, and I've got to confess, I agree with Nick on this. That judge, he was coughing a lot and was like, "Don't let him be. Don't have COVID. Don't be sick, man," because that judge seems like he's on to the game. And
very much so. He's seen Binger multiple times, and he feels the way most of Kenosha feels. Because even though they were biased against, presumed Kyle guilty, they were less biased than the rest of Wisconsin, because we looked at it for venue transfer issues. It's what Chauvin's lawyer frankly should have done, but didn't do. And so we wanted to look at that analysis. And the reason what we found is a lot of people in Kenosha were still, this was a place that if you go back and watch 1940s documentary films, Kenosha described itself as America's town. And so this was a place where riots don't happen. Looting doesn't happen. Arson doesn't happen. This isn't LA. This isn't Chicago. So this isn't Minneapolis. And so to see it happen, and they knew why it happened, it was because of people that came from out of town. It was all the things that Binger was accusing Kyle of were the other people that were there that night. And the judge knows it. And so the judge is like the judge also knows, like, saying, "Oh, he came from across the border." The judge knows that's nonsense. Kyle came from a bedroom community of which Kenosha is the heart of that community. It's like saying you live in Alexandria.
It's a suburb.
Completely. And anybody in Kenosha really knows that. That's why the people that have negative impressions think he came all the way, think he was part of the Antifa type groups that came from Chicago, came from Seattle, came from Portland. I mean, they were burning down African-American businesses when they were here. They were, they destroyed the dinosaur, for crying out loud, that was, popular outside of a local museum here. So there's still buildings that are damaged. There's still buildings that have been torn down. So people know what was really happening, and that a whole region of the city became openly lawless. And the judge knows that. So that's why Binger was obsessed with, "Oh, judge, don't allow them to identify these guys for who they were. Don't allow the true perpetrators that night, who were trying to kill Kyle and trying to harm others and trying to blow up a gas station. Don't let the jury know that they're the ones I've been accusing Kyle of being, that they were the troublemakers, the agitators, the outsiders, the rioters, the looters, the arsonists." I mean, he actually used the word, "Don't worry, judge, it was just a little arson." Just a little arson. I'd like to use that defense. I mean, it sounds like something from the show Archer. "Don't worry, honey, it's just the tip." I mean,
credit to the judge. I mean, credit to the judge. He does not seem to be buying into it. And I mean, watching tap dance is just, it's astounding. I mean, sitting there and then he was like, okay, well, we could have the expert if he's talking about timing between shots. And Richards, I think, is the defense lawyer.
Yeah, Mark Richards.
He's sharp. He seems on it.
Yeah, I hope he continues to be that way. So yeah, I have no further comment on that at this juncture. But he has the benefit of a wide range of assistance. Whether he uses it or not is an open question. But it's a case where the prosecutors, really what his goal has been to try the case in the court of public opinion and win there. Like, that's where even when he's talking to the judge, he would go back into some routine about some old issue that the judge already said that's not coming into evidence. And he was often mischaracterizing that evidence once again. Why? Because he knows it's going to show up on clips on ABC, on CBS, and on NBC.
His expert apparently wrote it in his report, even after he was not supposed to have it in the report. He just still wrote it in anyway. So it seemed like, and I could be wrong, but Richard seemed to be on top of it in terms of like, but I'm not taking that report.
Right. And he did a good job inside the courtroom and on that occasion. And so I think that, that's what Binger's MO. Binger's methodology was to win this case before it got to trial. And the key to that not happening would be to do a very, very good jury selection. At this point, I don't know if that will happen. So, I'll get into more detail with it, on Sunday with Viva, depending on what happens between now and then. But what I set up was the best dream team of jury selection experts in the history of American criminal law. And it appears that Mark Richards will not allow any of them to help. Exactly. But it appears Mark Richards won't allow any of them to help. None of them. Nobody. So he's going to magically pick the jury himself. No, it's not. I mean, I've never seen a lawyer turn down that kind of help. And you're talking about a guy who talks about 100 jury trials and never talks about one he ever won. So, it's not, there were limitations always with him, and those limitations could be mitigated. There are things he's good at. There are things he's not so good at. And those things could be mitigated if we really helped with the jury selection. But at this juncture, I don't know if any of us are going to be able to help with the jury selection. So we'll see.
Wow. Okay. So, to get back, because we did talk, you sold the Alec Baldwin thing, which I deeply appreciate. I want everybody, please check out the full episode, but I can do a summation with you really quickly here. Essentially, and pretty much all of this is out now in the news. There are some nuances and details that we're afraid to go into, and I actually got to meet Robert on Saturday and Sunday, which is awesome. I mean, a great time. So this story is like moving everything else, and let's start off with the armorer and Hannah Gutierrez Reed or Hannah Reed or Hannah Gutierrez. It depends on how you look at it. It's easy to pile on somebody who seems to be very young and irresponsible and has a bit of a history, but she's 24 years old. And the more and more I look at it, and Mark is looking at it too, it's like, we do not want to just kick this girl around because she's very young, very immature, not always making the right choices. And I've not necessarily been, the brightest candle on the cake, and I've made dumb choices in life. But she was on the set and was shooting up cans with the rest of the crew. She's got a past. We shared some photos or dominatrix type of stuff. And she did this TikTok video. Yeah, it's very salacious. You could take it very far down the road. And then apparently she was playing around with the crew, shooting up the cans, everything else. And the reason she got on this set is potentially nepotism, because her father is Thel Reed. Now, Thel Reed, he's the opposite of incompetent. He first appeared in Gunsmoke in 1955. And he is the world's fast draw champion with live rounds. He's worked just hundreds of movies. And I mean the top movies, Quentin Tarantino all the way down. It's like if there is a literal Western movie, you cannot get higher than this guy. And well, he probably, vouched for her. Said, hey, go ahead and hire my daughter. He's 76 years old, and there you go. And okay, Chris H, yeah, good point. She probably worked for cheap. Yes. It was a mess. And this is part of why I would love everybody to please check it out, because there's a lot of nuance and details, and everybody's arguing over what the hell a prop gun is and things like that. And they're just wrong about it. And it's a problem. And Mark has worked indie films because of the time in New York. And literally, there's so much more to the case. And the more you dig into it, it's really hard to point a finger. So you go from her. She was at target shooting. Essentially, there's a gun. There's a bullet in it. It winds up back on the prop cart. Well, there's 3 guns. That was 1. Now, I don't know, Robert, have you been around a film set at all? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, that's why when I was on Tim Pool talking about this, it was, to me, I agreed with Tim that the probabilities that Baldwin could have no responsibility were low. If someone like Baldwin, go back to The Getaway, other films, he's been doing this for 25 plus years and involved in using how you use guns. There's great discipline and care that goes into the entire process at multiple stages. This is a very rare event to have happen or have occur.
Oh,
and
extremely
in that context,
rare.
It was, yes. And for it to happen, there's no, I mean, just frank about it, there's no way that Baldwin's not at least criminally negligent, more likely reckless conduct because of the circumstances and the training and the background that he has because there's about 5 things you're supposed to do before you ever pull that trigger, period, on set or otherwise. And he apparently didn't do any of those 5 things.
You've been on sets, and if you've been on low budget sets, they don't do that shit.
Oh,
you could talk all day long.
They still do. But if you've been trained in guns on set, you do those 5 things, period. It doesn't matter whether it's a $10 set, pro bono set, independent movie set, high-end set. The high-end sets with the union workers, you get everybody along the chain does what's supposed to be done. But you're Alec Baldwin. You've been trained. There's certain things you do before you ever fire a gun on set. And he clearly could not have done those things, or he would not have fired that gun.
Right. And there's also the cascade of events that happen between. Now, a good example.
Was that story you told me in Virginia? Did you were able to confirm that?
Let's just say I think that's true, but
can we disclose it? Can we tell people?
Well, it's the same story, only a little bit more salacious. Essentially, she was shooting at lunchtime with the crew, and I don't know if Alec Baldwin was in on that as well or not. So I don't know at what point that the bullet was left in the weapon. I think it was left in the weapon at lunchtime. And if that's why I was trying to say, if you get on the set, and I can envision it, and what I was trying to talk about is when you're on a set, you'll have to admit that there's dead time. And I mean, it is boring beyond like watching paint dry, just ridiculous, stupid, boring stuff. And then you get a bunch of people, and I just say, kind of roughnecks, whatever, ranchers. This is New Mexico. I'm from Tucson. I know the type a little bit. Bored. You got a gun. Nobody's doing shit. We're supposedly on lunch. There's a bunch of cans. Let's go shoot some cans. And you get somebody who's young, immature, not super responsible, and she might go shoot cans with us. That's what I believe happened. And then we get called back to the set, and there is a gun. It gets put back with the other 2, has a bullet in it. So I don't know what happened. I can envision that the cans were shooting up, and yes, she was shooting the cans the day before, or the night before, and Alec may have been involved in shooting cans, and there may be other stuff going on. But on the day of, there was definitely cans being shot, and we know that the gun was used at the time. Put back on the prop cart. I don't know what happened. If you think about it, though, what the sets I've been on, I can see boom, boom, boom. We're shooting cans and all these things. Okay, we're going live, film, and then you get distracted. You didn't actually fire off all the rounds. And
yeah, but if you're Alec Baldwin, you still don't go, hey, look, boom.
Well, we haven't even got to Alec. That's the problem. There's a lot of hands that are involved on the way here. So we go ahead. I'm about to hand off from her to the next person. But anyway, she put the gun back in the cart, bullets there. Whatever reason, she was not there to hand the gun to Alec Baldwin, which is her job, right? So we've got a couple breaks here. Somehow the gun has a bullet in it. She's responsible, and it's on the prop cart with 2 other guns. Now, we're getting back. We're going shooting. And the first assistant director comes along, Dave Halls. Dave Halls is a longtime veteran. He's been in tons of movies, including like The Matrix. I mean, he goes way back. He is impatient. Now, again, you've been on a set, right? What is the first assistant director's job? They're the asshole. They're the ones who are like, get your ass over here. Go. I need the extras. And I mean, they're the traffic coordinator. They're the dick. As Mark put it. This guy has a situation where the whole crew is a mess. We're running behind schedule. People walked off. The property master, this is important, quit that morning. And they just brought in some knucklehead who knows nothing anyway. Non-union, whatever, this whoever they could get. And it's like, oh, hey, we got the property guy, and they brought him in. So the first assistant director just goes, grabs one of the 3 guns. The gun should be fine. They're cleared. But he is not the person to assign the gun. He should not be taking the gun himself. Grabs the gun, cold gun, gives it to Alec Baldwin. Break number 2. Why does this matter? Well, okay, this is Dave Halls. He has been thrown off of Fired at least one other movie, supposedly. Known for being
Isn't this the guy that was connected to actually the Brandon Lee set?
I was getting to that.
All right, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
But now, in fairness, I don't see an IMDb credit on it, and it was the Sun in England that reported it. So I will say the Sun reported that he worked on The Crow 2, where Brandon Lee died
from a similar gun mishap.
Well, yeah, and I actually will break down what that gun mishap is, because it's very complex and very, it's unbelievable. It truly is an accident.
Yes.
But yes, he worked on the Brandon Lee set, allegedly. But then that was 1993. That's a long damn time ago. And I don't know what his job was, because, if you're around a long time, he could have been a PA or just, in transportation or something. Just because he worked on the set doesn't mean he was a decision maker who was involved in the situation. I think you would agree with that, right? We just don't know. So, I mean, it's a horrible coincidence, and it would be, a really bad thing, but, God only knows. Now, the Brandon Lee situation, actually, we'll finish this out, then I'll go to the Brandon Lee. But anyway, he handed it to Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin, now he neglected the responsibility for not checking the gun himself. And where I would point at him is supposedly that same gun went off 2 days before with Alec Baldwin's stunt double. I don't know for sure, but there was kind of a knowledge, and another actor came forward and said that all the senior actors were checking it themselves. But then this is where I have problems. And Robert, you deal with witnesses all the time. And I kind of am, I'm cynical. I'm like, I saw somebody goes, yeah, I was hired offer the job of armor, and I just knew that something was wrong, and I turned it down. And when I walked away, I had a feeling in my gut that something was going to go wrong. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I just, everybody, lines up to say, oh yeah, I was, it's like, if the people who attended Woodstock actually, who claim they attended Woodstock actually attended Woodstock, it would be like the entire population of New York. You know how that goes. So I'm cynical about some of that stuff. But anyway, Alec, for whatever reason, was doing a quick cross draw, which is taking the pistol across the body and pulling it. And that's where it gets confusing. It's like, All right, well, you're rehearsing, you're doing the cross draw. Why would you pull the trigger at all? Because, even with the blanket or, whatever, if you're just rehearsing, unless it's like an accident or something, which it's like, did you accidentally pull? So there's a little bit of a mystery on that end. And yes, you can make the argument too that why didn't you look into the gun? But so far we've got this just cascading chain of events to get to that point. And then to make it even crazier, a couple weird rumors out there. And, I'm not going to give credence to them. I will state that they're out there, but that doesn't mean I believe in them. But you have somebody's pointing out that her next movie or one coming up, she was going to be doing a documentary on, shall we say, what's the term that I can say with YouTube? Youth addicted people. I don't know. There's actually a term that they like to use, but anyway, let's just say sexual predators who like short people, and
Like actually short people or people under a certain age?
people who are definitely under a certain age and not as tall. Yes. Anyway, so that she was doing a movie on that. And then somebody else pointed out, I think her husband is a lawyer who worked with the Clintons, and there's some Podesta rumors. And anyway, whatever. But you see, that's just noise. Like the whole thing about the movie she's working on, that's a subject I think right now that's kind of hot topic, and she is known for doing documentaries. So I don't know if I should read too much into the fact that she was doing a documentary on a subject that's kind of a big deal right now. Does it really mean anything? I don't know. But anyway, so that's all out there. And it's like, and I'm also like, well, wait a minute. If it was a plot, that's a hell of a plot. We're going to plot to have a bullet left in a weapon that's on a cart with the hopes that somebody who's not supposed to hand it over is never going to check it and hand it to Alec Baldwin, and then he's going to be neglectful in his actions, and then somebody's going to die who happened to work in. Really? I mean, I'm kind of I have some trouble with that. Now, I did hear a rumor or question about people being upset about the safety conditions. And there was a question of like, okay, could this be sabotage? Like, oh, this is unsafe. I'll show you, you son of bitches, how unsafe this is. That one I actually could see happening. Somebody who's ignorant, they don't assume that one random round is going to happen to go, through all that, because they could think, okay, we just jam that, stick the round in there and then it'll get caught on the way. It's like, oh shit, somebody found a round, and then they can make a big deal of it, but it went further than they can imagine. Again, though, that's all speculation. It is absolutely, I'm not claiming anything. And this is news to the booze, and I'm the journalist, so I got to bring the journalist in to add the responsibility to this. But it's good that you're here, Barnes, because we're going to also be talking about Alison's situation. And, so we've got the great mind.
My instinct is Alec Baldwin should be under criminal investigation for reckless manslaughter. The political nature of the situation may be that he never faces consequences, but instinctively, I would think that he should be under. I mean, my understanding is the sheriff confirmed today that several people are under criminal investigation.
Oh, definitely investigate, and apparently they've already shipped everything off to the FBI.
If it's been sent to the FBI, then Alec Baldwin is completely safe.
I love that. We got perfect timing on that. He's completely safe.
I don't know if there's any validity to this, but I heard a rumor that this may also have a tie to the Clintons, or does everything have a tie to the Clintons?
Well,
I heard that.
I know. I just talked about it.
You got a Trump curse connection because of Alec Baldwin playing Trump and bad things happening to people that go after Trump. And now you have I always call it for my Hush Hush series at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And you have Alison Morrow.locals.com and unstructured.locals.com. On the Hush Hush series I call it the Clinton curse. So it's like, however you want to define it, people seem to drop dead if they're within a couple of degrees of separation of the Clintons in trouble. So I mean, this definitely fits the Clinton curse. Whether there's actual conspiracies, that's another story. But it is, striking how if you just get close to bad information about the Clintons, you better change your life insurance package pretty quick.
Yeah, I know. I know. I agree. But again, like I was saying earlier, Alison, you're joining, now, but there was that question about the Clintons. There's also the question about her next movie was a documentary about people who are sexual predators against young ones.
People who are Epstein fans.
Oh, yes, Epstein fans. So, yeah, if you take the Clinton and the Podesta and the and all that, anyway, so it obviously it's there. But then, like I said to Robert, it's like, well, wait a minute, that's a hell of a thing. I am going to say, I am such a strange mind power genius that I'm going to take a bullet, put it in a gun, put it on a cart with the knowledge that that gun will be picked up by the wrong person who's not in the chain of command, who will then hand it to an actor who's maybe a little bit sloppy, who's going to be practicing a quick draw. It'll happen to go and kill the individual that. Okay.
I just believe that story. You really think Alec Baldwin put the bullet in the gun himself?
Well, if I believe that story, Alex Jones put the bullet in the gun. No, I'm just kidding.
I guess I just don't. Maybe you guys already talked about this, but if somebody handed me a gun, the first thing I would do would be like fire it at the ground or something. I would never just take a gun somebody handed me and then just shoot someone like without checking.
There's five basic things he's taught to do, and he ignored all five.
It's a weird one, and actually, and even the fire in the ground, Alison, I get that.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm married to a firearms expert. I don't know if that's a terrible idea. I'm just saying I wouldn't have fired it at a human being. Maybe I'd fire it at the tree or something, but not.
You would just open it. Unfortunately, it's a revolver. You pop it and go look at the cylinders and go.
Yeah,
hey,
that's the first thing you do. Oh, are there any bullets in here? Oh, look.
Well, you'd assume blanks. So that's the problem. You have to look at the other side of the cylinder, but don't point the barrel at yourself and go,
yeah,
okay, those tips don't look quite right. But it is a mess. But then I don't know. I know that
somebody's like, Allison's like, so I started blasting. Do you see Joe's comment?
Who? I'm sorry. I'm catching up.
Joe Brown. Allison be like, so I started blasting. I wouldn't do that. I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I'm sorry. Don't put me anywhere near a gun. Well, I'm just married to a firearms expert. We're like yin and yang. You know what I mean? So
you don't just inherit it.
I'm brewing kombucha on the other side of the house when my husband is checking his M4. That's how our household works.
So by the way, I'm sorry I'm slow on the chats, guys. I'm whoa, there's a lot of chats. You bring Lynn, Barnes in and there's some weight here. I mean, damn. Okay, yeah. And yeah, you see tons of Keanu Reeves is definitely, but then that's part of the problem with the indie film industry and stuff. So I mean, seriously, please watch what Mark and I did. We did put a lot of work and effort into trying to give a kind of nuanced coverage over the situation, and that's on the new channel America's Untold Stories, again because it was America's Untold Stories to be taken down by copyright troll, which we are rebuilding from scratch from last Friday again. So this is all part of it. So anyone who's saying, oh yeah, I'm already subscribed to that, no, maybe you're not. Please go check it out. We just said, okay, we're waiting. And by the way, that doesn't mean we gave up. It means that YouTube's going to take potentially a couple months to settle all this, and we have content to get out. We wanted to get this show out. We want this to go forward. So we said, okay, hell with it. I built the channel again, and I'm like, we're going at it again. And once we resolve that, the people who hit us with the copyright strikes, I may, shall we say, since they don't really want people to see it, do everything in my power to not only get that out there, but maybe I can get more body language experts to look at the footage and we can magnify it even more. It would be fun.
That'd be a smart form of payback.
Not that I hold grudges or anything like that, but you never know. It's just a crazy thing.
My brother says he doesn't hold grudges. He just keeps adding to the list.
I don't know. It depends on how I feel at the time, but it is a very, 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 very frustrating. So,
well, speaking of, in the news, George Gammon, Rebel Capitalist Live, YouTube just suddenly struck his channel out of the blue, like they did to Ron Paul last week. And so I talked to him and I said, look, do a massive YouTube campaign. Do a bit Twitter, social media, everybody. And Joe Rogan got involved. Joe Rogan retweeted out Gammon's thing. And within about 2 hours of Rogan's retweet, George Gammon's Rebel Capitalist Live channel was back.
Okay. All right. Somebody pointed this out to me. The first video I released was of John Brennan, that very, very classy CIA chief. All sarcasm, folks. Okay, scare quotes, sarcasm in the works. Anyway, I wanted a picture of him because he likes to vote for communists. He's done it. And I needed a good communist flag. And so I picked one. I did the YouTube image search. Turns out, I guess I picked the Ohio flag with the communist logo on it. And somebody had pointed it out to me. And they're saying, you desecrated that flag. And I'm like, well, I kind of didn't really desecrate it. I just took somebody else's desecration of it and put him on it. So Upgang Actual, I apologize, but it actually looks better than the real flag for that. And you have to admit, it's a fine looking thumbnail. He's got a very handsome expression. Huh?
Can you show us?
Oh, absolutely. Hang on. I will do that. Well,
speaking of I see people in the chat wanting to know about the Rumble locals. Really, that's a merger. If you look at it, it's a stock swap. So it's really a merger. And they've been talking for months. And the goal was to integrate Rumble's technology, which is better on the video streaming side, which was a weakness of locals. They were trying to improve, but that's a very intense bandwidth. And it made a lot more sense for them to merge than for them to continue, than for Rumble to try to add locals attributes, and then for locals to add Rumble attributes. They have the same objectives, the same agenda, the same shared viewpoints of a free speech driven social media platform that's not algorithmically manipulated. And so I think it will work. I knew about it a couple, in advance. I think it will work very well for both locals and Rumble. And people that are worried about it do not need to be.
Hopefully it'll fix the locals live streaming.
That's the goal. The goal is to really upgrade there.
So does Rumble have the capacity to do a guest feed for live streams?
Oh yeah, well they do it right now, Viva Barnes.
Yeah, Viva Barnes, we do it. It's on Rumble.
However,
and so you can interview. It's a little bit better bandwidth. Like when I go live, do a live stream on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. It tends to crash locals. It will crash locals like once every 2 live streams I do. So they weren't ready for 1,000+ people hopping in at once for a live stream. So they knew that to upgrade that was going to be a serious infrastructure investment. It took Rumble a time to get to where they could do live streaming, to where they could do the equivalent of super chats, etc. Yeah. And it made a lot of sense because, like, by the way, where Rumble is going and the merger, their idea is that 100% of advertising dollars go to creators, right? Things like that. So that's where they could integrate some financial components to really monetize what would disproportionately benefit in the end smaller creators.
Okay, now
how do you make money if you're the company? If you're Rumble,
how do
they make money?
They have other stuff. They sell people's footage, and they want to be a syndicator. Speaking of which, on that note, Barnes, can you talk to your friends at Rumble and locals and say, please get a synchronization tool like Odyssey? And that will make life so much easier for everybody involved. Yeah. Because we put up a show on one and like Odyssey and magically gets there. And, everybody has good ideas and they can take
I got you.
And Odyssey.
You mean the ability to upload to everywhere at the same time?
Well, or just scrape the feed. Because, Odyssey scrapes the YouTube feed and grabs it. Another thing that Odyssey has done is gotten with people who have built like a Chrome plugin. And this is slick. If you have the Odyssey Chrome plugin and you go to, like, let's say my YouTube channel, it will tell you this is on Odyssey. And you can go click and just go watch on Odyssey and not watch it on YouTube. The corporate overlords, or even better, let's say that happens to get nuked because of a copyright strike or something else. It will take them to Odyssey and they can still watch that video that has disappeared. All that can be done with Rumble as well. This is technology that is not.
Well, really just email me and I'll email the CEO because I talked to him last week, so that's not a problem.
Okay, well, okay, I definitely will. All right, so back to Allison. You said here we go. This is John Brennan. See, this is a handsome, good thumbnail, is it not?
I like it. I thought you did a good job.
It's just the commie symbol in the CIA superimposed on the Ohio state flag.
Apparently, I did not know it's the Ohio state flag, but no. Anyway, so this is the channel, folks, and you can see that this is the show that I was talking about with Barnes right now.
Hold on, that's the chick you were talking about?
Yes.
This story's not going to end. No wonder Alec Baldwin's crisis community. Now, Allison, did you ever deal with crisis communications teams? Like, I dealt with that a lot in LA. I mean, the really good ones. I'll give Baldwin's people credit. They were spinning like 6 different versions of events that made him look innocent in 24 hours.
Yeah, you mean, yeah. I have, but I'm sure they were lower paid than what his staff, what their staff is.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Guess who the biggest paying clients of the big crisis communication firms, including a big named one in Hollywood, is? They're accused of the same things that Mr. Epstein was accused of. Oh, that's their number one set of clients.
I was going to say Bryan Singer, maybe.
Yes. But I mean, they're an interesting group. They bill like mad. Like, I mean, they make lawyers look cheap.
Well, unless you're talking about David Boies, that guy seems to have his hands in everything. It's like the last maybe good thing he did was go after Microsoft. Now, God only knows what that dude's doing.
Speaking of news, did you hear the story apparently that there's a bunch of jurors that keep getting struck in that case about the Theranos case?
No.
Yeah, apparently like when another juror was caught playing Sudoku during the trial. It's like, I mean,
I enjoy looking at her.
Just heard. So I don't know what's going on. It doesn't surprise me.
Well, I enjoy looking at her though. I mean, she's got the whole. She's gone from Steve Jobs wannabe psycho clone to frazzled mother.
Well, not only that, isn't her defense that she was so beat down by her boyfriend that's why she couldn't think straight about don't commit fraud today?
I haven't seen that. I'm sure though, while she was, doing her, "Hi, I'm Elizabeth Holmes. Come invest in my company. Because I'm a female."
And I just look like Steve Jobs by accident.
Well, but she managed to get the full white rim around the eyeballs. Yeah, she's a prize. But the thing is that she had a former Secretary of State as one of her main people. Was it George Shultz? I think it is.
Well, the current president of the United States was a supporter of hers. Remember?
Well, okay, but you can understand that. I mean, maybe you sniffed her hair. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but who knows? Actually, I have not checked yet. I would be shocked if this was not yellow already. It probably is. So while I am looking at the status of this feed, how are we doing? Yes, limited ads. So before we go any further, folks, I always have to give James Esparza, aka Tape Damage, his due, and and we probably have been for a half an hour, but I haven't even had time to look at it. Of course, we're yellow. Now we have Allison, some legal heft with us. So let's look at your situation. You've released the videos now. You're out with it. I've known Allison has had a real job for a long time, and now she no longer does.
No, I do. I still have this, Eric. This is real. What you and I are doing is something real. Don't ever discount it. We have something real, that's Eric.
True. I picked the wrong term. So let's just say a day job. And she no longer does. She's free. So tell us what happened.
Well, as Barnes can understand, I'm trying to be very careful about what I say at this point in time. However, I was shooting videos for the Department of Natural Resources in Washington. So it's a state agency. I was hired to do that when I quit TV news in 2019. And I kept that very separate from what I was doing with my vlogs. Didn't talk about it, didn't act like a representative of the state or anything like that. I think the vast majority, I probably wouldn't be too hard to make the claim that like nobody really, other than the people who were friends off camera and stuff, knew that was even what I did as a job. So, and I was doing my work on my obviously personal equipment, personal camera, personal gear, personal time, all that stuff. So they were very separate. And I was encouraged to have social media when I was hired. But again, COVID wasn't a thing at the time, though I was never told, hey, you have to talk about this or you can't talk about that or else you're fired. There were no limitations put on me. So anyway, fast forward a couple of years, and my bosses call me a few days after my suspension on YouTube because I went to Twitter. As you may know, right, Eric, I had to go to Twitter again because I got suspended for my video with Dr. Cariotti. He's a medical ethics director who's suing the University of California over their vaccine mandate because he already had COVID. He wants natural immunity to be included. Not that controversial. And YouTube called it misinformation. They struck the video, suspended me. I had to do the whole Twitter thing again where you raise hell on Twitter. And it got like 400 retweets. YouTube apologized, said they made a mistake. They reinstated the video and they allowed me back into my channel. A few days after that, my bosses call and say, hey, we're aware that you're producing content about COVID that we believe undermines our policy. And you got to stop if you want to keep your job. And I said,
now in fairness, hold on. There was a little more to it though, because they said you're putting out videos that are spreading misinformation, correct?
They also did use the term misinformation. Yep. And
you said define misinformation.
Well, that's the thing. You have to, you really have to ask yourself if you want to get into that back and forth with, where does that even end anymore when you just start getting into a debate over like, are we going to go through every single video? And maybe I should have done that. I don't know. I just told them I don't spread misinformation. I allow a variety of scientific thought and discourse. And this is an agency that allegedly is grounded in science. It's the Department of Natural Resources. They have many biologists and forest health experts. And so the scientific
got to be the correct science. The approved science. It's got to be the approved science. It has to be the consensus science.
We're learning more and more that science is defined differently depending on who you're talking to. So,
for sure.
Long story short, they said you don't have to take any of your old videos down, but you just can't do any more new ones. And so that left me with the choice of just being censored about my podcast that I cover censorship. It just seemed to be very ironic. So I couldn't comply. There was never even a hesitation for me that the right decision was to say no, because I have had so many people take huge risks for truth and freedom of speech and informed consent. And we're at a really poignant moment in history for people making very serious and irrevocable decisions, not just for their health, but for public policy. And I just could not, in good faith, consent to self-censoring while I know full well the people who have taken the risk because they've been on my channel. And so I just, out of respect to them and in hopes that someday you won't have to lose your job for questioning mainstream narratives, I made the decision to continue with my videos, and so I was fired. That's it.
So that's
and how did they do so? Did they just how did they do so? Did they send you a letter, or how did the notice come about?
That's a really interesting question.
Okay.
Well, I will say, without getting into all the specific details, that I got an email saying you were terminated for inappropriate use of social media. So that's how I finally knew.
Did they put that in there?
Yes.
Remember, boys and girls, never in writing, always in cash.
Cash.
Because that's ill-advised. Years ago, I had a case before the Senate. The Senate Intelligence Committee was looking at my client, and they wanted to know my client's anybody within 6 degrees of Russian ancestry that my client knew, talked to, or interacted with. This was while Russiagate was going full scale. And there was a young Democratic lawyer who had worked for the Obama National Security Council who was really running the show, even though this was a Republican Senate. So, the Republican council was just a rubber stamp, just let the Democrats functionally run it, because really it was the intelligence agencies who run that. And so I just said, I said, what would be really helpful if you could put that in writing for me. Could you just detail that? Because that'll help me with my client. And because she was a little inexperienced, she did so. And then I shared it with some members of the press, and it was on the front pages of the Wall Street Journal a few days later. And the subpoena to my client was soon withdrawn. That's clear-cut violation. I mean, the problem is, to the degree they could only censor to the degree that you were identified as a state speaker. So to give an example, this issue is going up before the U.S. Supreme Court because in Boston, they had a flagpole that was a community flagpole. So you could petition and for 24 hours put up your flag. And every flag in the world was allowed.
I can't help but think, let your freak flag fly. Sorry. It just popped in my head.
Exactly. Whatever your freak flag may be. A Christian organization came along and said, we want to put up our flag. And that was the only one denied. Now, Boston courts are a hopeless cause these days, and so is the First Circuit Court of Appeals. Not a surprise, it's the only one to affirm no religious accommodations in the vaccine mandate context, which, by the way, Breyer is now reconsidering and allowing briefing to be done on, which means other justices are interested in it. But the U.S. Supreme Court took the case because they're going to say the excuse for the city of Boston was, this was our speech. People will think we're speaking religion. And the U.S. Supreme Court's going to say no. So when you have a separate channel that is your own voice, it is not their privilege or prerogative to in any way discriminate against you because of that independent set voice, because you're not acting as their agent in so doing. And to me, that's a straightforward First Amendment violation.
Barnes, I think it goes even further because Alison, because we've talked about this, she has never revealed in public, and we have made it a point of never saying in public that she even had another job. So not only did she never reveal them, but she never even said, I've got a job.
Well, when I was first hired, my station, they were like, Allison's going to do this. And, and I said what I was doing back then. But since then, I've never brought it up because, it was totally irrelevant. And also I just didn't, as soon as I started talking about anything, that I just didn't, it was just one of those things where I knew, having taken ethics classes, because you take them when you start, I knew how serious that was, for several reasons, like, and not the least of which is, like, I don't want to represent the State Department of Natural Resources. Like, I don't even want to represent them. So I would never even say that. But yeah, there are real, I can understand there are real reasons why you wouldn't want a government agent necessarily representing the government and then, doing things that I can see why there are ethics rules in place. Talking about, like, if you're representing the actual organization when you're going to speak, like, say, for instance, you have this knowledge and you go make some extra money on the side. You're in the ag department. And you're like, well, I'm going to go get paid to speak at the cattlemen's dinner, And so I can understand why there's a rule in place that says you can't represent the Department of Agriculture when you go speak at the Cattlemen's Association dinner and get paid $500 speaker fee. I can understand why they're that. But as far as, like, just having, like, your own ability to speak or, like, go to a protest, go hold a sign out on the side of the road that, like, where's the line on that? Because I've heard cases of people going to protests that officials in their particular government agency were trying to tell them they couldn't go to because those protests ran counterculture to what the policy was at the state agency. I mean, that's essentially where the line starts, in my opinion, starts to get drawn, is when you're talking about whether people have the right as a government employee to have their own opinions outside, like where's the line? Because does that mean you can't go stand on the side of the road and hold up a sign and say, I don't agree with, my agency's policy? You don't say it's my agency, you're just like Joe on the side of the road and you're like, I don't agree with this. Is that not okay? I don't know where the line, where you draw the line.
If you're military, you can't. But this is a good question. Can you file for unemployment?
I'm probably going to file.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's significant.
And I should add too that, because a lot of people think, not that Governor Inslee's mandate doesn't have an effect. What'd you say? What was that, Barnes? I didn't hear.
I guess you got cut off. Well, how about this? Are you going to send the emails to Project Veritas?
I don't know. I guess I'm considering all options, I guess. No, well, what I was going to say was, because a lot of people think that this is because of Governor Inslee's order. And though I do think that the other officials are like kind of following his lead. And so he does, his influence plays a role in this. We have our own elected official, Hillary Fran. She's the Commissioner of Public Lands. So this is her mandate. That's separate from Governor Inslee's, that all of the DNR employees had to be vaccinated by October 18th. And so what my bosses told me was, we have this policy that the employees are all supposed to be abiding by. And even if it is not even you, it's just the people you're associating with publicly by interviewing them, we can't have them undermining our policy. And that was where I really had to put my foot down, because I think it's one of the most dangerous ideas nowadays, like not idea, that's not the right word. The most dangerous sort of pressure on people right now is this guilt by association, that like you can't be seen publicly with somebody who has a different idea from you. You can't talk to them. You can't have a conversation or try to learn from each other. You can't do that, or else, you've become some kind of, you're espousing their ideas, or you're going to get attacked by the idea fairy, and you're going to end up with the idea STD. That's what I always call it. It's like an STD now, having an idea. And I don't understand how people think they can tell you how you can associate with somebody publicly. That just, I don't know, that maybe that's a question for you, Robert, because that was very odd to me. Like, you can't, even by association, you can't just talk to people publicly who have these ideas.
All right, I got to answer this real quickly. Securum 3 gave a $10 super chat. Thank you very much. If I'm going to have Robert Bunce on podcast, it would behoove me to have his name listed. However, I did not know if he was actually going to be here, and I think he can confirm that. And I think it would probably be worse if I said, hey, Robert Barnes is going to be here, and then he wasn't able to make it. So that is why I didn't advertise. It's a surprise. I'm delighted. And I've sent you invitations multiple times before. It doesn't necessarily mean you can do it.
Yeah, in fact, that was what Tim Pool's pointing out. The reason why they don't promote more people in advance is they have people who are no shows at the last minute. Just because of the nature of the situation or circumstance. Sure. In Tim's case, they got to get out to West Virginia and out in the boonies. But cool compound he had there. But yeah, I mean, there are really clear differences. It's like establishment of religion versus free exercise of religion. It's a similar legal construct. There's a big difference between somebody misrepresenting the state's views by being an agent of the state at the time they express themselves politically, and someone being free to express themselves politically in their individual personal capacity, and that not being limited merely because they receive a paycheck from the state. And they know, and I mean, we even have the Hatch Act that covers this in the federal employment context. And you look at that, and what all that is about is you cannot leverage your federal government employment position to promote a particular political agenda.
You mean the Jim Psaki Hatch Act?
Yeah, exactly. You'll suddenly see a totally different approach now that Trump's people are out and Biden's people are in. The media won't cover it the same exact way they covered it before.
It's called cuddling. Yes, versus exactly. Covering. It was covering, now it's cuddling.
And what you're really talking about, these are political purges. I mean, to be frank, That's what I'm going to look at, bringing First Amendment challenges increasingly, not just on religious grounds, but political expression grounds, because it looks like certain federal agencies their real goal is to purge political dissidents using vaccines as merely a proxy, because they know it's an effective proxy for determining potential dissidents, potential neos in the matrix. And it's clear, I mean, you couldn't do it in other circumstances. So that's funny. So that's the way to. I think clearly what they did here is a patent First Amendment violation, and it's worth taking a shot at. Is my take.
Okay, I love this, by the way.
That's a tease for the next
let me
video.
get a Barnes war. Get a Barnes war about whether to put Barnes in the title or not. Keep the super chats coming, and we'll debate it all. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Actually, he asked earlier, am I going to go on sidebar? I kind of technically did.
You already did. They just don't.
Yeah,
they may have missed it. You and who was the other lady? I'm blanking her name.
Karen Strawn. I kind of pinched hit. I'm sort of co-hosting, filling in for Barnes a little bit. But yeah, no. A couple weeks back. Definitely check it out. So awesome. Now, Allison, I know the producer is calling you, so we probably need to be wrapping it up. And I don't know, Barnes.
What's the producer going to dress like for Halloween?
Well, we really want to dress her up like Cindy Lou Who, because she looks a lot like Cindy Lou Who, and our dog looks like Max from The Grinch. So we wanted to get her antlers. We're just having a hard time finding a Cindy Lou outfit because it's kind of like a red. It's sort of like a red cape. So we're on the look. We're big on this sort of not spending tons of money on Halloween costumes that will fit your kid one time and they wear one time. So we'll see. I have yet to find the right red cape that fits a toddler that weighs 20 pounds. I found one that she could suffocate in, and drag down the street, but not one that will fit her. So I don't know. We may just put a dish towel on her and just tell her she's Cindy Lou Who.
Oh, perfect. Now, everyone, thank you so much. As you know, unstructured.locals.com, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, the professional in the middle who actually posts it here, Alison Morrow.locals.com. To quote David, go ahead, you guys stick around for a minute, and I will see everybody later.